Hello again. Today we're talking about the valve blocks, and specifically the rear valve block. The Range Rover Sport's air suspension system consists of a variety of components. Common failure points consist of the valve blocks, the compressor, the air springs, or leaks where the air lines connect to these components. The rear valve block is located in front of the left rear suspension turret. It's a combination of 3 computer-controlled solenoid valves, and these valves, when open, allow pressurized air to enter either the left spring, the right spring, or for air to equalize between the springs. If the proximal system is depressurized, opening the valves allows air to flow back to the middle valve block to be vented to the atmosphere, and the springs will drop. Problems with the rear valve block are typically isolated to the rear axle. The most common finding is that the rear end drops when left overnight. This is also a common finding when there is a leak in the air spring itself, typically where the air line connects to the top of the air spring. To rule out the air springs, it's important to spray the rear springs with soapy water to check for leaks before replacing the much cheaper valve block. If you see bubbles forming on the air spring, you likely need a new air spring or connector O-ring. Leaks in the valve block won't typically cause bubbles, and this is because rather than air leaking around the valve block, it actually just vents back to the middle valve block. If you see bubbles on the valve block, it's likely a leaking connector or air is escaping from the solenoids. But overall, if you don't see bubbling around the air springs, and you have a rear end suspension issue, the cause is likely the rear valve block. This video will walk through the steps to remove the valve block, and I will post a follow-up video on disassembly and reassembly, as well as cleaning the valve block at a future time. As usual, the first step will be to disconnect the battery, and this will prevent the vehicle from operating the air suspension while you are underneath the car and removing components. Of note, it's extremely important to put the entire rear end up on jack stands, because removing the rear valve block will depressurize the rear springs. The rear valve block is located near the rear left wheel, and to access it easily you will need to remove this wheel. Once removed, you will be able to see the valve block in front of the suspension turret. On this vehicle I have swapped the air springs for coil springs, but you can note the rear valve block here. Once the rear end is secured on jack stands, you can start with removing the wiring harness since it's the first thing that's accessible. Just press the tab and pull it off. This valve block is trickier than the other two to remove due to the lack of space. I would first pull the valve block away from the suspension turret by pulling it forward off of its rubber pegs. After it's a little more loose, take a small 12mm wrench and start removing the 3 air lines. To remove the lines, turn them just a few times until you start to hear air hissing out. This is the left, right, or compressor side system decompressing. Once you hear a hiss, step away from the vehicle and let it decompress until the hissing stops. This might take about 10 minutes, but make sure to do it for all 3 lines. Once the air is out of the line, you can fully remove it with the 12mm wrench. I recommend removing the right hand spring line first. Once it's free, you can reposition the valve block like so. Then you can remove the compressor line with the little space that you have left. Once only the left-hand spring line is remaining, you can actually lift the valve block over the suspension turret like so. And this will give you plenty of room to remove the last line. And that's all you need to successfully remove the valve block. At this stage you can either replace it with a new one, or attempt to refurbish it by cleaning the O-rings and the solenoid seals. I will post a follow-up video soon regarding disassembly and reassembly if you're interested in attempting to clean the block. Otherwise, a new valve block will cost about $150 for a genuine part, or $60 for an aftermarket part. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for tips, tricks, and repairs for Range Rover Sports and LR3s that can end up saving you thousands over taking it to the dealer. I post videos about once a week, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching and have a good one.